milestone on the way to more research, more activities. But it's a good moment to look back at what we have done and learned over the last 5 years, and also to hear some of the voices from within our Creating Safer Space community about their personal highlights in this process, what they are taking away from it. And then finally, to think about how we can continue the important work of supporting communities protecting themselves from violent conflict in the future, so after March 2025 and for many more years to come. So rather than just looking back, we also want to importantly look forward. And I think that's also if you are here and you haven't so far been involved in the network, as I say, it's not the end. We're celebrating a milestone and we would really love to connect with you in the future as well. So the invitation we sent asked for a local drink to bring. So my drink is very British. It's tea with milk, but it comes in a lovely mug with our logo on it. So I hope that makes up for the
Barrett, you're on mute.
Did you hear me talking at all? No.
Yeah, the first bit, just last couple of seconds, really.
Okay. Nerv, did you bring a drink as well?
I did, yeah. I brought a cup of coffee from
Ooh.
a mug created by Rachel Julian. It's
Also
too early for
exciting.
alcohol in my time zone, so.
Good. So we will start by, Nerv and I will start by looking a bit back at the last 5 years and summarize what we've actually done, what we've found, and kind of what's already in the pipeline for the next years. And then we go through the program. So I'll share a few slides that we've put together. Some of you may have seen some of this before. For others, it will be completely new. So just bear with us as we talk you a bit through the last 5 years of our research network. Go. Can you see this? Is that working? Yeah, perfect. So we've tried to also translate the slides into Spanish. If there's mistakes, it's all my fault. I'm sorry, but we hope it makes it easier for you to access what we're talking about as we go along. So I'll start and then I'll hand over to Nerv to continue. Why did we see the need for a research network that would look into how civilians keep themselves and others safe in the midst of violent conflict? Unfortunately, as over the last 5 years of our network activities, I would say the need of civilians for protection has actually grown. So when we first wrote the proposal for our research network in 2019, the official figure, for example, for people forcibly displaced due to violence was around 64 million. Now, the figure from end of 2023 was already 117 million, and I think the latest one I saw was already 128 million and counting. So the number has basically doubled over those 5 years. And also we could see that although there are lots of attempts of trying to keep civilians safe in armed conflict, not least that UN peacekeeping operations have protection of civilian mandates now, but also many other activities of armed and unarmed actors to keep civilians safe. This capacity is not growing at the same rate that the need is growing. And we really need to understand more what can be done to keep people safe. So that was kind of the outset from where we started. So how do I get forward here? Sorry. There we go. So this is exactly what the Creating Safer Space Network tried to do. So we are an international research and impact collaboration. And over the years, we've brought together a total of 70 organizations in 13 countries who are all interested in these questions we are addressing. And our aim is really not just to understand, but also to support unarmed civilian protection and community self-protection in the middle of violent conflict. So we've had kind of 3 core strands of activities over the last years. One, really thinking about weaving networks of so-called stakeholders, so everything from the communities and groups protecting themselves to researchers, to policymakers and artists and many more in different countries and regions. Then a big focus, because we're a research network, on actually supporting and financing research that explores unarmed civilian protection and civilian-to-civilian protection in communities in more depth and helps us to understand better how it works and what the challenges are. And then obviously also to disseminate those findings within the communities, bringing them back to communities, but also at the national and international levels to anyone who should be interested in this. So that's what we try to do in the kind of dissemination strand. So in a nutshell, we really asked what happens when the protectors of civilians don't look like this, like men with arms, right? And this is just one example. But what if they look like this, for example? This is the example of women protection teams, of which there are very many now in South Sudan, supported by Nonviolent Peace Force, who do protection work within their communities. So really this shift of thinking of who could be the protectors of themselves and of others in these situations of violent conflict. So within this first strand of work of really weaving networks, we did lots of different activities to try to bring people together. A lot of this was done online, not necessarily because we wanted to, but because 5 years ago we were just going into the first phase of the COVID pandemic. And so we put on a lot of research cafes and training sessions on research methods online, which then has the beauty of all being recorded. And we have a whole YouTube channel for creating safer space where these things have been recorded so others can actually use them. And these things will be available in the future as well. We worked on a knowledge database with academic and practitioner resources on unarmed civilian protection, which we have just moved to a new location. So we will soon send around where this can be found now, and it's now more easily accessible than it was before, to really make it easier for people to access the knowledge that is already there on unarmed civilian protection. We also supported some training on UCP principles and methods for our network members. We were involved with the community of practice of unarmed civilian protection to develop a toolbox for a decolonial perspective on the work. So how can we decolonize protective accompaniment? And we also developed, with the help of some of our co-investigators and advisory board members, a participatory method for evaluation and learning that was then pioneered by 3 organizations and 3 projects in 3 different countries. And we also brought together, finally then, when it was possible again to travel, all our projects that we supported in the network in 3 major events that we did in Kenya, in Thailand, and in Colombia, really bringing our different research teams together and learning from each other to see what findings there are beyond single research projects and more kind of this overarching learning. So that was really fantastic because, as you all know, I mean, it's nice to exchange online, and it's lovely that we can do this event today here on Zoom, but there's nothing as wonderful as really connecting to people in person and to exchange in person and also chat over dinner and over coffee and so on. So I think we all enjoyed that and we learned so much. And I hope that the network work continues from there. So this was kind of the networking strand. And a lot of what we did, as I said, is available on our website and online, so it can still be used as a resource in the future. And I hand over to Nerv now to talk about the research strand of what we did.
Thank you
Before
so much.
Nerve,
Yeah, go
before
ahead.
Nerve
Go ahead,
goes,
Katya.
before Nerve goes ahead, if you missed it at the beginning of this meeting is supported by simultaneous interpretation. So please click your interpretation channel at the bottom of the screen. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Katya. Hello, everyone. My name is Nerv Makaspag. I'm a professor here at the City University of New York and working with Berit and everybody with the Creating Safer Space Research Network. So in the last 5 years, we've been very busy. We supported 26 research projects around the world. We can see it. We can see this in the map. Within this 26 research projects, 15 projects are led by organizations from the Global South. 11 projects are led by organizations from the Global North. We've covered 11 countries in the research network, from regions in Southeast Asia to Southwest Asia to Africa, South America, and North America. We are led by a total of 202 researchers around the world, and working with over 2,100 research participants, and working with around 8,000 people in the world. And what we want to highlight in this presentation are the core findings of the research. We encourage everybody to check the website for our projects, so we can view the list of projects. If you haven't seen this yet, we can visit the website and check out all the lists of the projects, including the project descriptions, the geographic area where they're working in, and also the research team and some of the highlights of their findings, and also some of the publications, and also arts-based output. But in this presentation, we will provide an overview of the more like high-level set of findings. The first core finding that we want to share is that first, there's a wealth of community-led unarmed civilian protection practices around the world. They're already happening, right? They're already existing. They're already set in place and set in motion in many parts of the world. What we found out in all the 26 research projects are that first, civilians are successful, right? Civilian communities are successful in protecting themselves and others from violence. They're using unarmed, community-centered methods. Many of these practices are led and carried out by women and men, old and young people, vulnerable or marginalized communities, including indigenous peoples, and mostly without having been trained by outside actors, whether they are humanitarian organizations, academics, or NGOs, or other institutions. And what we found out is that they're not only successful, but they're also transformative. UCP, or unarmed civilian practices, are transformative not only in terms of redirecting or transforming the relations of power within these communities between civilian communities and armed actors, state or non-state armed actors, but they're also transformative within the individuals and groups within the communities. They're empowering many civilian communities to take the initiative and protect themselves and be creative and innovative in designing different forms of practices and different strategies and approaches in protecting themselves and other people. The second core finding, if we can move the slide, please, to the next one, is that we found out that many of these practices, community-led, unarmed civilian protection practices, they work because they're local and they're culturally embedded. They're grassroots-led, they're community-led, and what we found out is that in their protection efforts, many of the local communities harness generations of experiences and context-specific knowledge and expertise. Right? So many of these practices are effective and successful because they're culturally embedded, geographically specific, historically and places specific, and also community members are already mobilizing and enriching generations of knowledge, right? Decades of practices, decades of knowledge in protecting their community from violence and harm. And this includes very specific forms and practices of using signs and symbols as early warning response, different forms of cultural expressions of collectivity and solidarity, spirituality, and the role of traditional arts, the role of community leadership, and the role of women. The third core finding that we found out from our research network is that an armed community or an armed civilian protection practices are linked to wider struggles for social justice and transformation. So in all of our research projects, in all of the 26 research projects, we had a better understanding that an armed community protection practices are directly linked with the broader struggles, movements, and resistance and expressions of power of community members toward structural forms of injustice and other forms of social and environmental injustices. Many of our research projects work with communities who are protecting their community members from violence directly related to extractive industries, in defense of land, in defense of life, in defense of resources. Many of our research projects that focus on unarmed community practices also focus on addressing gender-based violence. So what we found out is that UCP, unarmed civilian protection, is not isolated from other forms of collective expressions and solidarity movements against broader or wider forms of social injustice. The fourth finding from the research, three core findings. So we have, so in this set of findings, what we found out, what we want to kind of share is that first, there's really a gap, right, in our understanding of community protection and civilian protection that is not just focused directly on state-led civilian protection, right? In many of these research projects, we understand that first, all of these unarmed civilian practices are already existing, are set in place and set in motion. And for most, and most importantly, that they are transformative within and outside the community themselves. From this 5-year experience of conducting the research within the Creating Safer Space Research Network, through our constant evaluation and analysis and consultation with different research teams, we've developed a Creating Safer Space model, which is a framework or approach wherein thinking about how do we conduct a participatory, community-led research project that's focused on the protection of civilian communities. So within this Creating Safer Space model, what we want to communicate is we want to develop and share a research model wherein we're complementing the bottom-up and collective qualities of community-led unarmed civilian protection. And we've highlighted 4 distinct characteristics of this research model. Number 1 is that the model is internal, meaning that the research projects and the implementation of the research design and the research and data collection and analysis are led by communities themselves or led by organizations from the Global South. And if there are research projects that were led by Global North institutions or organizations, we have developed a set of protocols to promote safeguarding and to promote ethical protocols in research. And then second, participatory, right? So many of us are familiar with participatory research. We see the important value of participatory research in our model, working with and for rather than working on communities. We are highlighting the use of participatory research methodologies and approaches, and a lot of these are also creative, right? So the third feature of our research approach or model is that we mobilize and use and draw from arts-based and creative methods to amplify different voices within the community, marginalized voices, and address the problem of meaning in the different languages that we're working with. And then the last feature of the model is that it's constantly reflexive, right? Throughout the process of designing the research, implementing data collection, analysis, evaluation, feedback to the community, revisions, etc. We highlight the process of reflexivity, of constantly reflecting on processes, the findings in our positionalities, and to really protect the integrity of the research and also promote protect the marginalized communities that we're working with in our research projects. So we can learn more from the projects and the findings again on our website. We have different sites here that we can look into, and some of the deliverables that Berit will be talking about can also be found on this link.
Yeah, thank you so much, Nerv. I'll take the last few minutes just to talk about the last strand of what we did and what we are still doing, which is basically how we try to get those amazing research findings from the different projects, but also across the projects out there to the world, and to get people to know this. So obviously we are a research network, so there are academic publications, journal articles, chapters, and edited books that have already been published or are in the process of being published from all the different projects. So watch this space, subscribe to our newsletter, because there will be more and more coming out. If you are involved in academia, you know it's a very slow process, so there will be more to come. And we are also working on an edited book together with the research teams, where we try to draw out these overarching insights in much more detail, working across at least 2 different projects to bring insights from different places together. So also that is still in progress and forthcoming. We have a working paper series. We believe it's the first one there is on unarmed civilian protection, where we publish many more of the findings that the projects had. So also if anyone would like to publish something, this is something we publish ourselves and have more control over how quickly it will come out. We are very happy to talk about that. There are loads of brochures for a more general public in different languages that the projects have produced. You see some of the covers of the brochures and policy briefs here at the bottom of the slide. They are all on our website, so everything we do is accessible and downloadable for free. Have a look. Yeah, it's a very rich kind of collection of insights there, and also using a lot of those creative outputs of the artworks that have come out of the projects, which feature then in these brochures. And we've also tried, so both some of the projects and kind of our team of co-investigators who are leading on this network, we've tried to distill core findings into the language of policymakers in different places to try to get them to recognize the protection work that is done by communities and to think about ways of not to undermine them and rather support these efforts. So we've talked to people at the United Nations in New York. Nerv was there for a Protection of Civilians Week event. Rachel and I went together to Brussels 2 weeks ago to try to talk to EU policymakers, for example. And so we've tried to kind of distill what should be important to decision makers and donors from our research. One of the ways in which we tried to not filter the voices of the communities, but bring them to policymakers in an unfiltered way, is through an exhibition, Creating Safer Space exhibition that Rachel Ray, our curator, put together with the artworks from, or a selection of artworks from our projects, which can then be experienced. So it's what communities wanted to tell others in this exhibition. And you see here a picture from when we showed it at the United Nations headquarters in New York. And it's been a really nice way of getting some of those community insights into the policy space. And you can see here on the left where we've already been with this exhibition. So it has traveled around quite a bit. And we hope to be able to bring it to other places as well. Of course, I said our funding is ending, so it will depend on finding new funding sources. But this is a very nice way to start discussions and to understand what community protection actually means. There's also a kind of an online version of this exhibition on our website where you can walk through the exhibition, but in a virtual form. So if you haven't had the chance to see it, that might be one way of doing it. Some of our projects created films, and there are also two songs with music videos that have come out of our projects, which is quite amazing. And we were able to show some of those films at the Wales One World Film Festival last year. But most of the films, or many of them, are available on our website. So have a look. They are all short films. But they're really, really good to see what the projects have done and what is happening in communities. And then one really other exciting thing that is happening at the moment is that we had some funding to help set up what we call the UCP Academy. So Nonviolent Peace Force is our partner on that. And we also have some input from an advisory board, from the community of practice of unarmed civilian protection and accompaniment, to set up a learning platform with very accessible courses and short modules from introductions into what is unarmed civilian protection, so very basic, to really the deep questions behind how the method works. So Robert from NP, who's leading on this, is currently working on a course, for example, what it means to lean into violence and not shy away, but actually create those relationships. And so we have much more in the pipeline, and hopefully this will be a growing platform for many organizations also to share materials, but also for communities to access this knowledge easily, and for many more people to learn about unarmed civilian protection and community self-protection. So everything obviously within the hope that this will keep more people safe from violence. So again, please stay connected with us, because we will be sharing much more about this in the near future when it's ready, set up and ready to go. So this is the website we've been mentioning, creating-safer-space.com. That's where we put everything that we have and can make available. So you'll find links to all sorts of things there. So that's a good space to go to find out more. I'll stop sharing here and stop the overview. And I would like to invite next Rosemary Kabaki to speak to us a little bit. Rosemary is head of mission of Nonviolent Peace Force in South Sudan. And Nonviolent Peace Force has been one of our core partner organizations in this network, and has helped us really to think through what we are doing as well, and has also been involved in some research projects in Myanmar and in Indonesia. And what we asked Rosemary, as kind of somebody who accompanied the process and observed it a bit, to reflect on is, so what do you think about the work of the network, and what's its wider contribution really to this unarmed civilian protection and accompaniment landscape? Rosemary, over to you.
Thank you very much, Berit. This is absolutely amazing that you're talking about celebrating this milestone. My having worked and been periphery involved in this network creation, the celebration started even from the thinking around actually researching how we could have a network of unarmed civilian protection organizations across the globe. It is absolutely the first step of the celebration that we need to think about. Because when I remember, Berit, you talking about the name of what this network is, creating safer space, it really makes us try and reflect, what does it mean to create safe space? And in our experience, all of us that are in here, reflecting back on our traditional understanding that safe space is a place with a lot of arms, walls, razor wire, physical barriers that distinguish areas that are safe and from those that are not safe. Very clear cut, black and white, on what is safe and what is not safe. And yet our experience has shown that this logic does not hold all the time. We have experiences in refugee camps. We have experiences in protection of civilian camp sites in South Sudan, where I'm currently based, that safe zones for civilians are often not effective at keeping civilians safe from violence. So the concept of having a network that look at creating safer space and who, so that we can answer the question, if these spaces are not safe, then what is? And we go to the communities that are affected by armed conflict and have those conversations with them to ask, what is safe for you? What does that mean? What do you do? What have you been doing? What should we recognize? What should we amplify? And what I love about the creation of this network more than anything is that it used such UCP methodology realistically through building relationships right across the globe. The typical, we all know when we look at the UCP tree, that's what it's all about. It's about building relationship. And this is how this whole process started. Lots of examples, and it is fascinating, and just listening to Berit and Nav, it is humbling to see about all this work that has been done by these 70 organizations in 13 countries. And the one thing that I really think about is all of us get a chance to share about unarmed civilian protection, because we know it is impactful and we know it is effective. But we all recognize how challenging it is to convince policymakers, to convince researchers, to convince decision makers. The examples raise attention, but to convince enough to give adequate support for this work becomes a great challenge. And it makes me think that amplifying the voices of the communities is one of the main areas that this network is going to give such a big impact. If it is so difficult for me in being the head of mission of NP South Sudan and passionately, you better believe passionately, believing on how impactful this work is, I am unable to get policymakers to agree and support this over a period of time. And this is a practical example. We are fighting desperately to get policymakers to support the work of nonviolent peace force in South Sudan. Then what about our women peace teams, who are the ones who are literally on the front line in those IDP camps, creating the safe spaces that we're talking about? This shows how fundamentally important it is that this network continues and proceeds, that this is a celebration of what is about to come, not what we have already done, but what more that we are all going to do, each and every one of us. I'm particularly fascinated when I hear, and from the teams that have worked maybe from Colombia or maybe from Thailand, and share those experiences in South Sudan and recognize the work that this network has done in helping building the capacity of all of us who are in this network, so we can share this capacity, we can share this recognition, we can share this platform with all those civilians that have been creating safe spaces since time immemorial. And in this context, I really want to say, I was so honored to hear that I can speak, because I'm like, we need to be louder. How much louder do we need to be? And what I would say is this network has given us a platform to be really loud. We will have the statistics, we will have the data, we have the videos, we have the songs. What more do we need to do? Do we need to draw to bring attention to this very crucial and important work that is being done by communities in order to enhance their own protection. And I really must commend and say, again, what are we celebrating today? We are celebrating, as Verity said, yes, the funding is finished, and therefore let us recognize and have a cup of tea. I'm having cocoa now in this small celebration. Can we continue in this celebration and say, what more are we going to do now? What relationships are we going to be? Let us no longer continue just talking about UCP. Can we continue doing unarmed civilian protection within the network? Reach out to each other, build the networks, get the resources, and collaborate, coordinate, and work together in order to move forward. So when I don't want to just use words, I want it to be real. And I recognize that even as this project finishes for NP South Sudan, you better believe Rachel and Berit are about to do participatory action research with our women peace teams, because it has to be real. We are always having organizations that talk about international instruments for child protection. When we talk about unarmed civilian protection, we look for practical steps to bring forth that protection. And this network is one big platform that will help us move to places of greater and greater celebration. And I look forward to the next thing that we are going to be celebrating. And a great congratulations to all these ones, or everyone who participated. Really recognizes that the ones of us who are here in this platform, we represent so many civilians. All those groups we work with, all those people that did something, helped us with our research, helped us put in the songs, helped us in our training. All of them are here with us today. And this is the celebration. And thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Rosemary. Thank you. Katja, I think you're next.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you so much, Rosemary, for your reflections. That was brilliant. I'm Katja, and I'm the Academic Network Manager of the Creating Safer Space network. As Nerv mentioned, we have 26 research projects around the world, and we will now hear from 11 of those projects. There was unfortunately not enough time for all of the projects to present, but if you want to hear more about the others, you can. Each of the projects has a page on our website. These 11 projects have kindly prepared pre-recorded presentations. We have asked them to share a specific highlight from their projects. So that could be a project output that they are particularly happy about. It could be an interesting new research finding, a new research method, anything that they decided that they wanted to share today. So I will now share these pre-recorded presentations.
Hello, my name is Pier Giuseppe Parisi, and I'm the principal investigator of the Ritualizing Protection Project, a collaboration between the NASA Indigenous Territory of Huellas Calotto in Colombia and the University of York in the UK. We are an interdisciplinary research team, including myself, Ana Deida Seque, my co-investigator from the NASA territory, Carolina Baltan Salazar and Pippa Cooper, our researchers in Colombia and the UK, Jolvi Lena Padilla Sepulveda, our former researcher, and Nicolas Braginski-Cascini, our filmmaker. Our project sought to understand how the NASA indigenous people of Colombia protect themselves in the midst of the armed conflict using their own spiritual and cultural practices, and how the Colombian state could better support these protection efforts. One of the key takeaways of our project is the importance that spiritual security and protection hold in indigenous ontologies, and in particular among the NASA people. Spirituality is both targeted by armed groups as a way to annihilate the NASA people, but it is also leveraged by the community as a way to cope with the insecurity generated by the conflict and to protect themselves. Spirituality manifests in different ways, through artifacts, symbols, rituals, and places. This finding, and more generally this collaboration, have paved the way for further collaborative research. We're now working together on the notion of spiritual harm, indigenous justice, and the concept of ethnocide in relation to the killing of NASA spiritual leaders.
Hello everyone, my name is Martha Okumu and I led the research on human rights advocacy against police brutality in Kenya alongside Professor Elias Opongo, Rachel Akinyi and Marie Ramton. Our study focused on how civil society organizations use armed civilian protection strategies to combat police violence in Nairobi and Kisumu. During our research, we uncovered troubling patterns, including systemic silencing of victims of police brutality, lack of legal support for victims, and deep-seated fear of retaliation. However, we also found that grassroots organizations are making a difference through legal assistance, community-led documentation, and non-violent advocacy. One key challenge which stood out for us was how to amplify the voices of those directly affected by police brutality. This led us to record the spoken word piece titled When a Young Blood Bleeds, a powerful artistic expression of pain, resilience, and resistance. It became a centerpiece of our exhibition titled Shadow to Strength, Resilience in the Face of Adversity, where we brought 20 activists who used their music, poetry, and visual art to challenge injustice and inspire action. Our research affirmed that activism is a powerful force for change, transforming awareness into resistance and demanding accountability. Yet, it often struggles to influence policymakers. That is why we continue to explore how to turn artistic expression into sustained action in partnership with platforms such as Safer Space Network. And I want to conclude by leaving you with an excerpt of our piece titled When a Young Blood Bleeds by Spontaneous, the poet.
My name is Marwan Darwish. I'm from the Center for Peace and Security at Coventry University in the UK. I am delighted to be with you today, participants from all over the world, to celebrate the end of this inspiring network. Our project is based in the rural area in the West Bank in Palestine, where the community live on herding and agriculture. The research highlighted the community-led self-protection and the wisdom of the Palestinian community to create safer spaces to enable them to stay on their land. Fundamental to that are the family kinship, attachment to the land, resilience or sumud in Arabic. The term faz'a in Arabic means to stand up for someone or to come to assist someone. This is a traditional form of solidarity and mutual support among rural community. It highlights the collective sense of identity which is embedded within the family network, culture, and local community, and critical for self-protection. I also want to mention that we produced short film called Unarmed Civil Protection in Palestine to reflect these issues, freely available on YouTube.
My name is Laura Forsyth, and I'm an associate professor at the Natural Resources Institute, University of Greenwich. And I've had the privilege to be the PI for an interdisciplinary project examining gender-based violence related to environmental and climatic change and conflict. As you can see, I'm presenting on behalf of a very large team with partners including CNEP Colombia, Bayero University, Kano, Nigeria, the Center for Agrarian Reform, and the National Land Coalition in the Philippines. The aim of Gender Just Landscapes was to partner with civil society organizations and engage with women's groups in different landscapes to understand gender-based violence risk related to environment and climate-related conflicts and post-conflict, women and community-led responses, and then identify opportunities to strengthen unarmed civilian protection, or UCP, approaches by learning from these community and women-led approaches. So there's been a number of important impacts and benefits from this project, but the one to mention here is the new research partnership. So the research funded through Creating Safer Space has provided us with methodological learning, new evidence, and new partnerships that have led directly to the funding of 2 new projects that expand from the topics explored in Gender Just Landscapes. The first is a 3-year project funded by the AHRC called Hitting the Ground, which is an arts-led transdisciplinary partnership addressing gender-based violence in food systems. And the second one is funded by the British Academy, and it's a 2-year project called Entangled Forest, looking at women's climate action in a new country, in a new context, the Brazilian Amazon, and also in the Philippines, building directly off the work in Gender Just Landscapes. So thank you.
Sawadee-ka. Greetings from Bangkok, Thailand. This project was initiated to introduce and reintroduce UCP to Thai society to inform that protection can also be done by civilians without using arms, and it can be learned. There are 3 of us in this project, Professor Mark Tamthai, Mr. Chawat Munpakdi, and myself, Chantana Wankeo. The project traces back into the key conflict incidents in the past 20 years to find out practices of civilian protection and their constraints. We found an unexpected result in that the third-party intervention has lost its credibility as a result of political polarization. What still confirmed our thought was that there was a greater need for protection from the threats of state securitization. We believe that total nonviolence promotion and a robust capacity building are essential for UCP enhancement in Thai society. The highlight was the rewarding outcomes. First, we were very happy to be able to engage nonviolent activists after the long 9 years of the lost momentum due to the military coup effect. There were valuable reflections, mutual confidence, and a good sign of wanting to reconnect. Today, our team member, Mr. Chawat, who now works in the Research Policy Agency, had an opportunity to propose a research scheme on violence monitoring. This is good news for the non-violence research community. Second, a nice and unusual opportunity took place in our project. We managed to meet with a team from the National Security Council. Despite a concern over the relevance of UCP, we learned later that the idea of UCP has been raised in other security venues after our first introduction of the concept. This is good enough for the beginning. Let's celebrate. Cheers and chayo. Finally, these are our research outputs. Thank you. ขอบคุณค่ะ
Hello everybody, my name is Chas Morrison. I'm presenting our Creating Safer Space project, which is visualizing early warning and preparedness in civilian protection from 3 states in South Sudan, where I've been working with my colleagues Diria Vicky Thomas and Haji Elias Hillary from the Community Aid for Relief and Development NGO, CARD NGO, humanitarian organization in South Sudan, and I am discussing 2 papers that we are submitting to journals, jointly authored papers, where we are trying to get to the bottom of what these community practices for protection, early warning and conflict preparedness entail. So they're practices that I'm showing from these photographs that my colleagues took. These illustrate some aspects of these cultural practices. In the top left, a couple of Dinka elders from the Dinka tribe are demonstrating the use of plants and reeds whose heads can be tied in certain ways. Tied separately, it indicates conflict will be avoided. The heads of the plants are joined together, it signifies combat. Some women there demonstrating a protective ash circle drawn on the ground elders, bottom left, showing the symbolic use of traditional weapons, shields and bows and arrows, and a young man up a tree doing a hand whistle with his fingers to show early warning communications. So our project really uncovered the depth and cultural relevance of these practices which survive now in periods of great insecurity. And thank you very much. Goodbye.
Conflictos por el agua, vulneraciones y formas de autoprotección.
Conflicts due to water, risk and self-protection ways. This is a case in the south of Antioquia state in Colombia. We've seen conflict related to water in these areas. And this is an area with a great amount of water resources. And these water resources have been historically used for power generation. And this type of infrastructure results in different conflicts in the territory. So this is about farmer territories and their lifestyles in these areas.
Con cerca de 50 personas empezamos a fotografiar
with close to 50 people, we started taking pictures
para reconocer cuáles eran las vulneraciones
to recognize what were the risks that these rural communities were facing.
que las comunidades han desplegado en un aprendizaje de cerca de 50
But
años.
such risks have led to many lessons learned by the communities in close to 50 years.
Pero también bordamos estas fotografías
So we took these pictures,
sobre el
but we also created this collage to be able to have a narrative so that people can see what has happened in this area.
que los ríos sean para la vida.
So one of the lessons learned is that rivers should lead to life and to living.
Good day, everyone. My name is Gordon Crawford. I'm the PI for this project on unarmed civilian protection in the Anglophone conflict in Cameroon. The research was conducted by a team of UK-based and Cameroon-based researchers and practitioners, and the team members are all listed here. Our key findings were that local civilians have been very proactive in devising an array of ways to protect each other and to stay safe. In this way, the research has provided an important contribution to knowledge about grassroots efforts of community self-protection. A particular highlight was the poetry workshops that Nancy will tell you more about.
We conducted 2 poetry workshops with affected civilians. A total of 18 participants engaged in the workshops. None had prior skills in poetry writing. It was an inspiring and empowering approach both for participants and researchers. So it is my joy to read to you one of the poems entitled, How Can We Protect Ourselves? We thought it was just a teacher's strike, but it turned out to be a war that began with rubber guns, machetes, and spears, much to the laughter and mockery of all. Then came machine guns, trucks, and the full war. Houses, schools, churches, hospitals burned. Men, women, children, and the elderly killed mercilessly. Young girls, women pregnant or not raped pitilessly. Churches and hospitals no longer safe. We ran to the bushes for our protection. We formed vigilante groups for our protection. We blew vuvuzelas, whistles for our protection. We formed WhatsApp group disseminate information, all for our protection. But how do we protect ourselves against kidnappers whose sole aim is ransom? How do we protect ourselves when old age, illness, and physical challenges prevent us from fleeing into the bushes? How do young men protect themselves when they are most targeted? How do we protect ourselves from bullets flying in all directions? Thank you.
Hola, mi nombre es Natalia Campos, soy
Good morning,
profesora
I'm
de cine y
Natalia
voy a
Campos. I'm
comentarles
a
algunas
cinema
cosas en
professor.
relación
I'm
con
going
el
to talk a little
proyecto
bit
Estrategias
about
Comunitarias de Protección Civil Armada que
some of
desarrollamos entre la
the
Universidad
unarmed
Autónoma
civilian
de
protection
Occidente en
strategies that
Colombia
were
y la
designed at the
Universidad
Autonomous University
Este
in
proyecto
Colombia.
tuvo
This
una
project
de acción participativa con el
had a
propósito,
lot of
digamos, de
participative
fortalecer
action with the
las
purpose of
habilidades y las
strengthening
capacidades de las personas
the
en las
skills and
comunidades.
capacities
Así
of
que
people in the
desarrollamos una
communities.
estrategia
So we
de
developed
formación de formadores,
a strategy called training trainers, and this included research, photography, and some other areas. And this audiovisual component
alta en el proyecto porque
was very important for the project
fuimos encontrando junto con las comunidades
because along the path we found with communities how
a ellos apropiarse de una
different
voz
people could participate to
a los jóvenes con
really
quienes
feel
formamos unos
empowered,
talleres de investigación.
especially when it comes to the youth.
Capacitaciones y de
So after all the training and co-creation in the communities themselves and with the youth, we organized a first international festival of participative video. And this happened in November 2023 in the Autonomous of the West University. And we included people from 25 different countries. So this is a very enriching experience for us to celebrate the creative capacity of communities and how unarmed civilian protection can strengthen the protection in the communities so that we can have a more horizontal approach, so that we keep the people themselves can keep developing these strategies. Thank you so much.
My name is Arfiansa and I'm from Indonesia. I and my colleague Del Cironi is the principal investigator of this project. We research the civilian infrastructure and initiative for self-protection from violence conflict in West Papua, Indonesia. West Papua has experienced all forms of direct violence since 1964 to date. Through this project, we didn't only do research, but we also did advocacy and training. This combination of research and advocacy is one of the most interesting and beneficial part of this project. We didn't only take data from the community for our research interest, but we also give them back to help solving their problem. In terms of research, our article was accepted and will be published soon by the journal Peace Building and Development. In terms of advocacy, we did UCP training to the West Papuan civilians. One of the training Noah has practiced the UCP in his work protecting IDPs. We organize also podcasts to not only disseminate our research, but also offer more insights about conflict management for the West Papua. So we invite more people to be involved in this project. With data we collected from the research, we also approached stakeholders and military officers in the capital of Indonesia, Jakarta. We have trained 28 military officers about the military approach to the conflict situation. This all happened because of the flexibility of this project. From the only 2 activities like research and training, we have done more than we expected. This is the most wonderful and contributing project not only to our personal gains, but also the community that we research. Thank you very much. I hope you can continue this project to create a safer space for vulnerable people.
Hello, I'm Luisa Maria Colonia Zúñiga, Director of Master Piscali and PhD in Political Science. Alongside my incredible colleagues, Italia Andrea Guadalmendis, an expert in public policy and popular education, and Gustavo Suarez Rios, a PhD in Information and Communication Sciences, we formed Master Lab. Today, we want to share a powerful highlight from our project, Development of Civil Protection Capacities in Women Displaced by Armed Conflict, through popular communication and community legal empowerment. At the heart of this project is the Transmedia Booklet, a collaborative creation between our team and the displaced women participants. This isn't just any booklet, it's an innovative tool for unarmed civilian self-protection. By blending personal stories, legal insights, and community strategies, it transforms academic research into practical, actionable knowledge. But what makes this booklet truly remarkable is the process behind it. The women didn't just share the stories. They transformed them into advocacy tools, reclaiming their agency and showcasing their resilience. Through this co-creation, they developed ingenious strategies to protect their rights and foster safety within their communities. This booklet doesn't just preserve their experiences, it serves as a beacon for other communities facing similar challenges. It's a testament to the power of participatory methodologies, proving that when the communities lead the narrative, the results are both impactful and deeply rooted in lived realities.
Thank you. Thank you. Those were really fabulous, like short films and highlights. I really enjoyed, and because I've been lucky enough to, sorry, my name's Rachel Julian. I'm a professor of peace studies at Leeds Beckett University, and I'm a co-investigator with Creating Safer Space. And so I've been lucky enough to sort of like see lots of the things coming out of projects, but that was really lovely. And I love that people are picking out the highlights of things that meant so much to them and their communities that they were working in. So that was really fantastic. And the difference that the different projects and the use of UCP tools has made already within those projects, it's just fantastic. So yeah, so we're celebrating today, which is fantastic. But also we've heard time and again already in the last hour that the work and the ideas don't stop. And we'd like to have an opportunity to hear from all of you. So we wouldn't be a participatory and reflexive network if we didn't build enough time for us to start sharing together and thinking about that. So we've got some questions for you. So we're going to manage this through the chat. But so really about sort of like, what is your next step? What do you feel like you could share with us here today about what's happening in your space that you work in or your projects? Do you have a plan for the future and how you might be taking some of these ideas or taking ideas that you've heard today forward? Or what opportunities do you spot for growing this field of UCP? We're going to share this through the chat. So I'll be sort of like collecting and discussing and sharing those as they come in, but also you can respond to one another and there might be questions. And please feel free to write in Spanish because Berit will help me with that because that's not one of my languages, and it will do that. So it doesn't matter if you've been involved in Creating Safer Space for years and UCP for years. This is the first time you've connected with us. We're pleased. I mean, Rosemary Kabaki, thank you so much. And you were quite clear in saying that we have to amplify voices. We have to influence policymakers, but how we do that is through the relationships. So we can say we have about sort of like 10 or 15 minutes now where we've got that time to really do that. So, I mean, if you have questions, also feel free to ask, but we'll do that through the chat function. So if you've come with an idea, now is your time to share it. And obviously we'll be collecting because we're recording this today and we will be able to collect them and really help inspire people to decide what comes next, to see this celebration today as only the first part of something which is much bigger. It's part of a long progress that obviously started a long time ago in communities protecting and helping each other. So it could be from some of the things that Berit and Nerf explained at the beginning of ideas we've already had about how to make sure not only the key conclusions, but the way we work together is continued and made more widely available. So that's our idea between having both the Creating Safer Space model of actually how we work together, but also in creating the UCP training hub, the academy, so that actually ideas don't get lost. So if anybody has a really good training program that they'd like to share, feel free to post that there into our space now. And I know that many of the people who were just featured in the really lovely films we've just seen are also here today. So if you've got questions from some of those, those people are here and will, I'm sure, be happy to answer them. So thanks, John. John's asking about the funding for the network is ending, but the work will continue indeed. So we don't have other funding specifically for continuing creating safer space. It's more that we're going to use the different mechanisms that we've got to try and create those opportunities. Because obviously you'll have seen that the work in creating safer space has happened across the world in those different communities. So those places are where new projects and new initiatives can also be developed. So we're not going to be doing the same centralized funding as we did at the beginning. But working together on funding is a really good idea. Hi, Celine. We're Real Women Peace Link. Hi, thank you so much. Oh, fantastic. So you are already planning to engage the county governments to actually share the findings. That sounds so. That's exactly what Rosemary was saying about how we have to get to the policymakers. So that's fantastic. Really good luck with that. That would be, yeah, there's so many countries that need that. But Regine, the Heinrich Böll Foundation in Rio is thinking of getting involved with designing it with the federal police security and strategy for the Amazon. Yeah, so the UCP Toolbox and Academy, absolutely. So the Toolbox and the Academy can absolutely be ways that you can share. So sometimes when we meet with policymakers, they want frameworks and toolkits to understand how they share these things. So absolutely, and yeah, absolutely, those would be fantastic. Oh yeah, do keep us up there. Randy's Mel and Randy are in West Bank at the moment, developing a UCP pilot project, and it's got an evaluative and research component. Fantastic. And look at the communities. So they're actually using that to set measurable security goals, putting together plans and with a specific community. Fantastic. So there's new projects beginning. Yes, so and I think Rosemary mentioned that the women in South Sudan are starting a participatory action research project themselves to do that, and I know that Rosemary very much works with the idea that research and advocacy are very bound together through participatory research. So there'll be new research outputs coming. And I think Berit mentioned that the database of resources on UCP that we've pulled together through Creating Safer Space is going to be more accessible and easily available it's very soon. So we can add any new resources into that as well. In Cameroon, Gordon says, there's going to be a workshop with policymakers. Next month. Wow, yeah, that's coming up. And in London. So again, fantastic, taking Rosemary's call to meet with policy and change policy. And presentations with UN OCHA, fantastic. And fact sheets in English and French for all of those. That's brilliant, because that's also widening out the number of resources and almost like those key questions that we need to take to policymakers, be really useful. So thank you for that. Oh yeah, so Berit reminds me they're working on a so we're not doing the big funding that's available, but the idea that people are already off looking for those funding for the next little bits of projects. So really trying to think about the data that exists within places that have been doing UCP for a long time, and how that then is made accessible to researchers. And that's a really important part of that. And doing that with Luke, who's already been in Creating Safer Space, and also Nonviolent Peace Force. So fantastic. Oh, Fernanda, hi. Again, fantastic, bringing these topics into the teaching, and in peace building, absolutely. Oh, you've got a module on arts and, oh, it just disappeared, arts and focused on UCP. Yes, the constant waves of violence that you talk about are really challenging. So even though we have these great ideas, being aware that we're working in challenging situations is really, thank you for reminding us of that. Fantastic. So I spoke to policymakers and international ones to support UCP in Myanmar to protect unarmed civilians. And there's a global advocacy event and the Women, Peace and Security Conference Women, Peace and Security Conference coming up in Philippines. So that's another really interesting connection, and working with those communities. Yes, we definitely need to. Working on how we get the funding, Sapai, is absolutely crucial. So that's also where our relationships are so important, because we can actually sort of share ideas and work together to make that more possible. And it's definitely something, as well as facing violence and disruption, facing lack of resources is equally frustrating. So thank you. Northern Caucasus. Northern Caucasus in Colombia. Yes. Oh, you've got funding from UNESCO, Chet. Fantastic. On protection of human rights defenders and expanding political space. Establish an Indigenous leadership diploma. Fantastic. So there's a whole set of, so as well as that, we're seeing that already people are reaching out to policymakers in different ways, creating teaching materials, working with different institutions to establish maybe a range of mechanisms that we can sort of go on and learn. So the sharing of those mechanisms that you go on to create is equally as important as sort of like the processes involved in UCP. Absolutely fantastic. Thank you. And carrying on the UCP projects. And Rosemary's takeaway today highlights the achievements on the value of celebrating UCP in as many forms and as creatively as possible. So yeah, so creativity and using creative methods was very much part of Creating Safer Space. And when we've taken the exhibition around, we've seen what a difference it makes to people, including policymakers, to be able to see those visual images. Thank you very much. Yes, you will. Thank you, Timothy, disseminating the Women, Peace and Security Conference in Philippines. Oh, you're part of the organising committee. Even better. Yes, so opening those platforms and inviting people in when you have that space and ability to do that. So that'd be fantastic. And Berit's saying there's this opportunity to pull all of these learnings and ideas into the way in which we've structured the UCP Academy and Training Hub, is that it should be very easy to bring courses in and make them available. So this should be something that people feel ownership over, rather than a sort of like a hub somewhere sat over there, but it becomes part of the work that we all do to create that. So fantastic. Louisa, currently mapping, connecting community initiatives in Val de Cauca region. Oh, fantastic. Contributing already to UCP practice. Yes, the labeling and the terminology is very interesting there. It's not all the same words across the whole world. So really trying to influence the design. Gilda, yes, this is just the beginning. There's so many more things that everybody's doing. I mean, just this one conversation here in the chat. Thank you so much for sharing, because it's so exciting to see all of these different levels of work going on, and the creating working groups. So yes, not just one geographical education. So making sure that we can connect through together, either through training courses or through networks, including the community of practice working groups that are being built up, and the structures there. So that's another whole way in which we can connect through practice and inviting people to share. Safianza celebrating right now. You've got an international symposium next week in Indonesia. Fantastic. And also sort of New Zealand, which is a place we haven't been to yet. So that's fantastic. And definitely, again, still trying to find that resource. And Madeline, thank you. Continuing expanding and sharing the possibilities and existing art and protection strategies, Canadians and the Indigenous groups, indeed, threatened by the US takeover. That's fantastic. And actually, brilliant timing as well. So thank you very much for all of those. I mean, do feel free to keep adding to the chat for the last few minutes. But I am going to hand over back to Berit to conclude our celebration today in a couple of seconds. But really, thank you so much to all of you. So what we've wanted to do is to have this as a celebration of what's been done and what all the hard work and achievements that people have made, but also very much not leave it that this is the end. So our connections to you, your connections to each other through this sort of like this chat, through this ability to share and understand the wealth of actions that are going on, is really fantastic. So thank you all very much, and we're all looking forward to working with you more on that. So and thank you, and I will hand you back to Berit.
Thank you so much. It's lovely to see that people are already working on the next steps and doing things also together in the network and in their own context. So that's really lovely to see, because it's really in that spirit of this being just a milestone, not an end to the work. Just to conclude today's session, can I just say first, well, literally just cheers and thank you to all of you for being here. Katja and I discussed at some point whether we would have a big slide with all the names of people we have to thank, but then we decided we're not going to do it, because we're just going to forget half of the people, because there's so many people who were involved in this and without whom this whole network would not have been possible. From the very initial process of writing a proposal to get funding for the projects and to get a network together, to the people who have carried out lots of the work, who are always kind of these unnamed people in the background. So think about it, 70 organizations means also there are all these administrators who help with financial issues and contracts and all of these things, right? So all of these people have really contributed to the success of this network, but we never have really got the chance to say thank you to them. So if you have the chance to go back to the people you were involved with, please send our thank you to them as well. Because they are so crucial to how our network works and how we were able to support communities. And not least, the communities themselves, I would say the biggest thanks really goes to them and to their willingness to share their experiences with us and to help us kind of understand better what is going on when communities are successful in protecting themselves, but also to see what the challenges are and what necessary adaptations there need to be as the context around us changes all the time, as we've also seen in the chat where different people mentioned that violence is flaring up or a new president is in place threatening communities that perhaps before weren't that much under threat, and so on. So thank you to you all, and congratulations to you all and to everybody involved as well. I just want to mention that as it's not the end, but just a milestone, Katja has put the link to the newsletter into the chat. So there will be more publications coming out. There might be more online activities. There might be new funding opportunities that we want to keep you informed about. So if you subscribe to that newsletter, you will and kind of fairly regular intervals, get some information about what is going on through that newsletter. So not more than once a month, probably less than that. We won't flood your inbox, but that's one way of staying in touch. We're also hoping that our exhibition will travel to new places. We will inform you about the new website for the UCP Knowledge Database once it's up and running, and also about the UCP Academy and what comes out of that. So it's really good to stay in touch through the newsletter. Also, we have the Creating Safer Space email address that will continue working, and we will be monitoring that. So if you have questions, if you want to be put in touch with other people, with some of our projects, for example, just drop us an email, and we are very happy to help you build these connections if you don't know how to reach people directly. So all of this will continue. And also, if you have ideas or opportunities that you would like to share with others, please let us know about that as well, because we can put that into the newsletter, or we can make those connections happen so that we can join forces to continue this work. So yeah, what can I say? I hope we'll all stay in touch, and there will be much more to come. I think today, from the highlights of the projects and the chat, we could already see that there is a lot going on already. And I would like to quote something that Mahmoud Soliman, who's one of the researchers on Marwan's project in the West Bank, said when we met at our workshop in Nairobi last year. He said something along the lines of, let's plant and nurture many more community-led protection trees around the world and connect them into a forest of unarmed civilian protection. So in that spirit, I would like to thank you and close the session. Thank you so much.
Thank you all. Have a wonderful weekend.
Everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.